This tutorial is going to explain how to paint and airbrush a galaxy like this. So I just did a cover up. This was a different idea that didn't quite come together, and I did a Mars black cover up here. And you can do cover ups as long as the paint underneath is even. If it's bumpy or you have piles of paint, then it may cause problems, but other than that, I often do cover ups. I'm just using, like I said, acrylic Mars black Liquitex, 1/2 inch square brush with regular tap water, and a 5x5 inch canvas. So I'm going to get a good coat of Mars black. I'm going to do the sides too on these smaller canvases. Usually like to gallery wrap them. Once that's dry, you can use an airbrush. This is titanium white. This is a specific high flow airbrush paint, which really helps. And a little bit of ultramarine blue. We're going to mix that up to get a baby blue type color, real light blue. I'm going to start in the upper right hand corner about 1/2 foot away and just go upper right to lower left. And then in the center, I'm going to do an oval movement with the airbrush to get a glow. Because we want a thicker glow there in the dead center that we can contrast against the debris of the galaxy, different planets and stars and rocks and dust and everything it contains. But try to get a good glow here behind everything, and then we'll build on top of this. This is primary blue and titanium white. I'm going to use a detail liner brush. Get a light blue And we'll just add some stars here before we start to work in the galaxy. Most of these stars will get covered up, so they may come through faintly, but it'll add depth if you have a couple different layers of stars. So we'll put these in the background, and some of them might come through later on. And then we'll put more stars as we add layers. Then we'll have some brighter ones right up front, dim ones in the back, and then it'll just help with realism. This is a small round brush, a little bit of water, and then Mars Black. And I'm just doing this, I think some of the airbrush paint was too wide of a pattern, so I'm just going to go in with some black and try to frame up that glow a little bit better. And here, just moisten your finger and use that to blend. And then now we can start to add the main bands of this galaxy that are spiraling around. You try not to make your bristles too wet for this. You want it to you want to scrub in these designs and these different bands of gas and rock and planets and stars and everything that's in it. But you want it to look like a gas, real thin, kind of scrubbed in without much moisture. if you don't have a lot of moisture on the brush and you blend this in dry, or at least mostly dry, then it'll catch on the texture of the canvas better. And if it's too wet, it'll go down into the little valleys between the bumps on the texture of the canvas and be more solid. But if you do this, the texture and the pattern on the canvas it'll stay on top of all those bumps, and it'll just look like a bunch of different, tiny pieces of debris or whatever's in it. I don't know if that made sense, but just keep your brush somewhat dry for that part when you're adding those bands in. And try to be erratic with your brush strokes, up and down, all over the place. You don't want it too uniform and clean. And I just framed up the bottom a little bit. I'm just going to keep scrubbing in those bands and try to make them spiral around that center. Now, as these bands get closer to the center, that central glow, they're going to get lighter and they're going to pick up some of those blues and whites. So we'll take the black, add a little bit of blue, a little bit of white, and then we'll get a dark blue gray. And I'm using a detail brush here, a smaller brush, but same thing, not too wet. And I'm just going to continue with that rotation of the galaxy, but we have a bit of a lighter color. Smaller brush, so it's going to be more detailed, a little lighter. So this will help a lot with realism. And then just continue to add that design. I mean, it's going to be thicker up front, and then it's going to taper in the back. And that'll help with the perspective. So just try to taper it off to a point on the back bands, and then as it gets closer, obviously they're going to get thicker and wider and more detailed. It's just Mars Black detail brush, And I'm going to go over everything. Add a second layer. So when we airbrush this again, all this will show through, and so we'll have darker areas with high contrast. Underneath it all, we'll have that dark to light as it gets near the center, and this will just give us a good base to work on. So I'm just going over the main parts here with black. This will add a bit of detail also. Here I'm just going to add some white dead center, blend it out a little bit just to make sure that glow comes through as we move forward with everything. Now I'm going to add a second layer using the round brush. Not a lot of moisture in the brush, just like that first part. I'm going to do that again, especially on these front bands. Make sure that they come through. So now that the galaxy's mapped out pretty well, I'm going to get ready for airbrushing the second layer, and I'm going to put some more stars in. So similar situation as those first stars, same thing. I'm going to add another layer to the bright spot in the center, but also near the center, those gaps where that initial airbrush glow is coming through the dark bands. Go ahead and put some paint in those gaps as well. Don't get carried away with it, but those gaps that are nearest to the dead center, put a little bit of that brighter color in there, and it'll help with the lighting quite a bit. Alright, now at this point everything's mapped out well, and we're going to put another layer of just dust and glow on top of everything. And this will really going to bring it to life here. This is that same color we mixed up for that background glow. Just white and some blue. And then just be gentle with this. Don't drench it. Just a real light mist. Get closer, brighter in the center. Pull that airbrush away so that it's a real soft glow up on the top and bottom. And don't cover up those bands of debris that we put in. But just make sure it's a smooth glow around everything, and brighter in the center. And a couple of these stars, you can go ahead and give them a little shot with the airbrush also. And then these will just be, that way all the stars aren't the same size, aren't the same color, and then these will have a nice glow around them. So they could be planets, larger stars, anything. But it just adds a bit of variation and randomness, which will help with the overall look. And once that dries, just going to take some pure titanium white and just put some dead center so that center really glows. So here I'm just going to blend some of these areas out with, this is just a round brush with water. Don't drench it so it's dripping. I mean, dip it in the water, wipe it so it's just a moist bristled brush. And then you can use this to spread that pigment around, break it up a little bit, and just blend some things out in key areas if you want to. I want everything to be blended around that central glow. So it's just a smooth transition from that bright spot out. And even if acrylic paint is somewhat dry, this technique will work. So you can just dip, wipe, and then you have a wet brush with no paint, and you can just go in and do small circles, and that paint sometimes will scrub out for you. You can just get a decent blend. Here I'm just using the back of the brush just to scrub off some of the paint that has dried that won't move. You'll pick up little, as you paint more and more, you'll figure out little things that work for you like that. Here in those glows, those glowing stars and planets that we put in, just put a little dot of white dead center, and then that'll really make those look good. And then we're starting to get close here. And then like we did before, I'm going to do the same thing. So you just dip a round brush in water give it a wipe so it's moist, and then just scrubbing in erratic motions with a bit of pressure. I just want to make sure that that front band of the galaxy pops. So I'm just going to wash out some of that white, some of that light color that settled on top. And then we'll have a good, that'll really make that pop. And that's it. So that's how you can paint and airbrush a galaxy like this with acrylics on canvas. So thanks for watching, and all the materials are in the description, the top pinned comment.